A 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, hello.
Masters of Rock Talk, back on the dial, traveling at a speed of 45 RPMs, where the vinyl will bring you to a new destination. On with the show. Yours truly, Ferris Kennedy, in the Jody Sadler Studios. Alongside with me, a man who is no stranger to hanging out with Barbara Streisand, none other than
Richard Kimball again, Dr. Ian Clark. And it pleases me to be here. It really does. It's a beautiful studio. It's beautiful outside. And we're beautiful people. So it all fits.
a little Marilyn Manson quote there. Beautiful people. I like that.
Sure, REM too.
REM.
Beautiful, shiny people.
Shiny, happy people.
Shiny,
going shiny. So what do we got on the dial today?
Well, I'm talking about something close to my heart. And it's something that's really important. It's often overlooked, and that is 1960s garage bands. I've subtitled this 3 Chords and an Attitude, kind of a riff off the country music 3 Chords and the Truth. Okay, let's just go through kind of what a Wikipedia definition of garage band. Amateur rock band typically holding its rehearsals in a garage and usually having only a local audience. Yeah, well, that's pretty much true. A group of people who play rock music together and typically practice in a garage or rec room. Yeah, that sounds about right. Garage rock was a new form of rock and roll that was first popular in the US and Canada from about 63 to 67. During the 1960s, it was not recognized as a separate music genre and had no specific name. In the 1970s, some critics referred to the style as punk rock. There you go. The first form of music to bear that description. Although it's sometimes called garage punk, proto-punk, 60s punk, whatever, the style has predominantly been referred to as garage rock. And the term comes from the perception that many such performers were young and amateurish, which they were, and they often rehearsed in the garage, which I mentioned. Mostly they're made up of teenagers from the suburbs. And the performances were often amateurish, with typical themes revolving around traumas of high school life and songs about lying girls, kind of femme fatales of high school. The lyrics and delivery were notably more aggressive than was common at the time, often with growled or shouted vocals that dissolved into incoherent screaming. Instrumentation was often characterized using guitars distorted through a fuzz box, which can sound really cool. I used to have a fuzz box. Nevertheless, garage rock acts were diverse in both musical ability and style, ranging from crude one-chord music to near studio musician quality with bands like the Knickerbockers. I'll get to them later. There were also regional variations in many parts of America with flourishing scenes, particularly in California and Texas. The Pacific Northwest states of Washington and Oregon had their own defined sound. And of course, you know what came out of those Pacific states much later on. The style had been evolving from regional scenes as early as 1958. There was a song called Tall Cool One by the Wailers. And Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, of course, was 1963. In 63, garage band singles were creeping into the national charts in greater numbers, including Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Trashmen, Rivieras, and the Sonics. In this early period, many bands were heavily influenced by surf rock, guys like Dick Dale, and there was a cross-pollination between garage rock and energetic, upbeat, party frat rock. There sure was. Louie Louie. Through the latter sometimes viewed as merely a subgenre of garage rock. I don't think so. The British invasion of 64 greatly influenced garage bands, providing them with a national audience and leading many often surfer and hot rod groups, to adopt a British invasion lilt or tilt. The invasion also helped inspire new and very raw bands to form. Garage rock bands were generally influenced by those British beat groups. They had a harder blues feel, such as the Kinks, the Who, the Animals, the Yardbirds, and the Small Faces. Who else? The Pretty Things, Them, which is Van Morrison's first band, and a group called the Rolling Stones. A handful of British garage bands were formed, the most successful being the Trogs of Wild Thing fame. Another influence was folk rock of the Byrds and Dylan. Thousands of garage bands were existing in the US and Canada during this era. Garage rock was filled by a procession of groups with often more enthusiasm than skill, but they had a vitality about them. So there's a basic setup. They had guitar, bass, drums, vocals, usually 4 guys. Later on, they'd bring in an organ, harmonica, maybe even a sax. And by 66, the sound was becoming a lot weirder, trippy even, with the addition of psychedelic music to the basic recipe. It's fair to suggest that Question Mark and the Mysterians created a pretty potent garage template with 96 Tears. Great song, by the way. It's been covered endlessly. And some might say it's an extension of garage rock. You could say the same about the Count 5's Psychotic Reaction. What a great song that is. Or Dirty Water by the Standells. Everybody knows that riff. If you play guitar, you know that riff.
That's a Boston Red Sox every time they win because of the whole River
Really,
Charles.
Yeah.
They play that at every home game I've been to.
It's
Fenway
great.
Stadium, and that is something else.
However, the addition of psychedelia gave garage rock some of its greatest songs. Electric Prunes, I Had Too Much to Dream Last Night, You're Gonna Miss Me by the 13th Floor Elevators. These are great songs. Garage rock never really died. It went into hibernation and eventually mutated into punk rock about 10 years later. And I think one of the lessons we can learn from garage rock is the appeal of simplicity. It's been said that country music is 3 chords, and the truth, if that is so, then punk rock and garage rock really is 3 chords with an attitude. Okay, let's look at some of these, the more recognized garage bands of the 60s. The Sonics, they're from Tacoma, Washington. They're were formed in 1960, and these guys are still together. They hold the record for the most years between albums, 50 years between albums. Unbelievable. They always overloaded the board. If you know anything about recording, they always recorded in the red, and they liked that messy sound. The Trogs, originally called the Troglodytes, they had Wild Thing, which Jimi Hendrix didn't make Hendrix a star, but when he did it at Monterey Pop, it really came to life. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, they did a song called Wooly Bully. It has been sampled. It's 1,000 times. Paul Revere and the Raiders, they dressed up in colonial outfits, and I can never really figure them out, but they were part of the whole LA scene. Of course, Iggy Pop and the Stooges. Iggy's still touring incredibly. At one point, Iggy was considered to be a replacement for Jim Morrison and the Doors. The Kingsmen, they took Richard Berry's Louie Louie hit and made it their own. In fact, why don't we just listen to some of those iconic opening chords of Louie Louie? Thirteenth Floor Elevators in 1965. They launched the debut album titled You're Gonna Miss Me. The Kinks, the Brothers Davies. Yeah, the Kinks had 2 really garagey sounds with You Really Got Me and All Day and All the Night. Question Mark and the Mysterians. This band was an odd little bit of band, but their hit 96 Tears, they had this strange organ-driven riff. I'll play some 2 or 3 bars just to give you a feel of the vibe of that song.
Too many teardrops for one heart to be crying. Too many teardrops for one heart to carry on.
Them. You recognize his voice. That 19-year-old Van Morrison fronted them. Their big song was Gloria, Gloria. The Seeds from L.A., 1966, Can't Seem to Make You Mine. The Beau Brummels. Oh, they had a great song in 64 with Laugh Laugh. Bobby Fuller 4. Oh, they had great songs. Bobby Fuller it didn't end well for him. He had Let Her Dance, I Fought the Law, covered by The Clash. Love Has Made a Fool of You. This podcast is going to dedicate, like we dedicated an episode on Charles Manson, the Beach Boys, to whatever happened to Bobby Fuller, one of the strangest deaths in rock and roll. Very odd. The Castaways from Minnesota had Liar Liar, great song, Count 5. They're from San Jose, 1964, Psychotic Reaction. I'm going to play a few bars from that. I'm sure you're going to recognize it. It's been sampled to death. Electric Prunes, I mentioned I had too much to dream last night. Fifth Estate, great band. Five Americans, The Outsiders, Time Won't Let Me. What an amazing song that. You still hear that from 66. Music Explosion, Little Bit of Soul, you still hear that. Music Machine from LA in 66, Talk Talk was their big song. These are all still relevant songs. It's scary because, for instance, Louie Louie was recorded in one take for $400. It's something like, it's ridiculous. And in fact, when they recorded it, the singer fell off the soapbox he was standing on, so they go an extra round if you listen to it. It's incredible. The McCoys from Indiana, Rick Derringer's band, big hit with Hang On Sloopy. The Hombres, Let It Out, Let It All Hang Out. Sir Douglas Quintet from 64, Bob Dylan's favorite band of the time. Go figure that out. The Sonics, I mentioned them earlier. The Sonics are something special. Bands that say they owe something to the Sonics include the White Stripes, LCD Sound System, Nirvana, and Eddie Vedder. Soul Survivor. They had a song I think called Express to Your Heart. Strawberry Alarm Clock from 67. Incense and Peppermint. Can you get more of a 60s song than that? It's a wonderful song. The Standells, we already mentioned them. Dirty Water for a 60s band. I'm going to play that opening riff again if I didn't. This is just so electric.
I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you about my town. I'm going to tell you a big fat story, baby. It's all about my town.
The Trashmen, they had a song called Surfin' Bird. And the word surfing never appears in the song, ever. But because the surf craze was on, someone said, well, why don't we call it, instead of just bird, call it Surfin' Bird. So it became a hit. For me, garage rock is the quintessence of rock and roll. It's not supposed to win awards. It doesn't get Grammys, thank God. It's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame. It's not supposed to make a lot of money, and it's not supposed to be note perfect. Rock and roll started as teenage dance music in stuffy smoke-filled halls with guys with too much Brill cream in their hair and girls in bobby socks. There wasn't much professionalism about it. And that was the appeal. People didn't worry about mistakes. It was an attitude, a sonic rebellion, a scream at authority. And I think garage rock, just like punk rock later on, owes its existence and appeal to that teenage energy of non-conformity. And for that, I believe it should be celebrated. The garage band hits that remain with me, I'll name the Knickerbockers, Lies, the Standells, Dirty Water, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, Incense and Peppermint, Strawberry Alarm Clock, Psycho by the Sonics, I Had Too Much to Dream Last Night, Electric Prunes, I Fought the Law, Bobby Fuller 4, and Question Mark the Mysterians, 96 Tears. These are all classics, and I recommend you go out and take a listen to them.
So with the garage bands, it was an interesting take. They always say it's a musical group that has obtained little fame or fortune and therefore is typically relegated, at least metaphorically, to rehearsing and recording, not in a rented studio while being paid to perform on stage like more successful groups, but rather in someone's garage. So Dan Ferrant from Hello Music Theory provided a list, Ian, with the 11 of the greatest and most famous garage rock bands. And he even put a definition which is kind of a little bit different. I think you're going to get a kick out of this. Garage rock in its simplest definition, focuses more on passion and energy. At the heels of famous bands such as the Beatles, many amateur bands purchased guitars and drums and played even without formal training. And a lot of these bands had their start in the humblest circumstances imaginable. A garage. Notably, garage rock is not a rebellion against other styles such as British pop or surf rock. Instead, it played on those styles. The genre is also notable for having simple and repetitive hooks, which somehow became a template in many garage rock songs. Garage rock bands hit their heyday in the 1960s. Thanks to these bands, the genre lives on. If you haven't done so already, put these 11 of the most famous garage bands on your playlist. Now, Ian, you're probably going to agree with 10.
Okay.
They have Nirvana at number 1 on the list.
So then to think Nirvana is a garage band.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Ramones.
Yeah, I'd go there, sure.
The Trogs.
Oh, yeah.
Clearance Clearwater Revival.
No.
Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs.
Oh, yeah, Woolly Bully, yeah.
The Runaways.
No.
Them.
Yeah.
The Kingsmen.
Well, yeah, the kings of it.
Tommy James and Shondell.
Yeah, in the beginning, sure.
The Kinks.
I know where you're going. I mentioned them. I'm okay with that.
And then Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the beginning.
And here's something to really top it off, to really make this Dr. Ian Clark-esque.
Yeah.
The 50 best garage rock albums of all time.
Okay.
And this is by a guy by the name of Josh Jackson, who put this list together back in 2018 at 8:01 a.m. on January 29th. That's what it's
Gotta read that.
from Paste Magazine.
Okay.
So he says to me, he goes, well, not to me, but he says, I wasn't alive in 1966, so I could only imagine what it must have been like for a music fan, or better yet, a budding musician, as the energy of garage rock pioneers like the Trogs, the Monks, and the Mysterians started taking over the airwaves. So, number 50, Ian,
Yeah.
we got 1966's The Standell, Dirty Water.
Right.
Number 49, 1966, The Remains, which is The Remains.
Okay.
John Spencer Blues, Explosion Orange. That was a 1994 album.
94.
Ty Segall, 2017. I never heard of these guys.
No.
Okay. Those Darlings, Screws Get Loose, 2011.
So these are all over these.
All over the map.
This is like into the 2000s.
The Raconteurs, Counselors of the Lonely, 2008. Ty Segall again, Manipulator, 2014. Paul Revere and the Raiders, Revolution, 1967. Now we're getting more to your year. King Tough Was Dead, 2008. Yeah, the Retards, 1998, Teenage Hate. The Kills, Now Wow, 2005. Japan Droids, Post Nothing, 2009. I don't know why they have the Black Keys in there, but Thick Freakness, 2003.
It's a mystery, man.
Coat Hangers, Suck My Shirt, 2014.
Okay, I think what we're doing is this is where garage rock went. How's that?
Parquet Courts, Human Performances, 2016. Flat Duo Jet, self-titled album, 1990. Grinderman 2, 2010. Oh my god, that means the first one around. Japan Droids again, Celebration, 2012. Libertines, Up the Bracket, 2002. The Shags, Philosophy of the World, 1969.
Yeah, the Shags are a really bizarre band.
This one's pretty cool. King Khan and the Shrines, The Supreme Genius of King Khan and the Shrines, 2008. The 13th Floor Elevators, you talked about them.
Yeah.
Easter Everywhere, 1967. The Cramps, Songs the Lord Taught Us.
Right.
Mikhail Cronin, MC2. VOCs, A Weird Exits, 2016. These are getting strange. The Hives, Veni Vidi Vicious, 2000. J Retard, Watch Me Fall. It's spelled R-E-A-T-A-R-D. White Stripes, White Blood. Okay, interesting that they got the White Stripes in there. VOCs again. Alas, 2010. The Seeds. You talked about the Seeds. The Seeds. The Kingsmen. Now we're starting to get a little bit, the Kingsmen in person. Best Coast, Crazy For You. Now it's back in 2010. The Black Lips, Good, Bad, Not Evil. Yeah, Yeahs, Fever to Tell. J Retard again, Blood Visions. 80 Current, Suppression, Ring Primary Colors. MC5, Kick Out the Jams, 1969. Ian, you remember that one?
Well, it's a big album.
The White Stripes again, Elephant, 2003. That's a very good album, actually. The Trogs. Okay, here we go. Top 10. The Trogs, From Nowhere, 1966. Number 9, The Monks, Black Monk Time, 1966. Question Mark and the Mysterians, 96 Tears, 1966 at number 8. Here you go, Ian. The Stooges, 1969, self-titled The Stooges.
Yeah.
The Strokes, Is This It? That's 2001. They're a newer band. The Stooges again, number 5, 1970 with Funhouse. The Electric Prune, self-titled Electric Prune 67. 13 Floor Elevators, The Psychedelic Sounds of the 13 Floor Elevators, 1966. Various artists, Nuggets, Originals, Artifacts from the first psychedelic area, 65 to 68, which was released in 72. And the number 1 garage band album of all time, The Sonics. Here are the Sonics, 1965.
There you go.
So,
Put as my friend here says, put them on your playlist.
wow.
Mo, the top 10 anyway.
Yeah, maybe the top
some of them really, it's debatable if they're garage bands. But anyway.
But as a gift, Ian, I will give this list to you because maybe you could dissect it and do a Clark's comments down the road.
Yeah, this Nuggets that my buddy Kennedy mentioned here is a very famous compilation, by the way. If you can find it, pick it up. Thank you very much. Well, that's great. And so, if there's anything else you want us to look into with garage bands, please email us.
At seriousrocktalk@yahoo.com.
And thanks very much for paying attention today. And we got a lot of new episodes on the way. Visit us on YouTube. We got a whole bunch of stuff listed there now.
140?
Yeah, like 17,000 shows or something. And it's so easy to find us, right? And we look forward to your comments. Please keep them coming in. Anyway, with that, I bid you adieu.
And I say farewell until the next time.
Bye-bye.
Au revoir.